Wow. I am Cristina Venegas, and I want to invite Paz Alicia Garcia Diego, the screenwriter, and Arturo Ripstein to join me up here, please. I always have to take a deep breath with this. Congratulations on this premiere. First of all, it is a real pleasure for me to be here with you again. And it's been a long time, and this film is, I think she was writing this film when we first met a long time ago, and so it's wonderful to finally see it in its full run. So, I I do want to start by asking you about the story. I know that's a story that is taken from real events, and there is another film that is made of this story. So, if we could begin with the genesis of the project and how you worked on it together, because you worked together in a very particular way, and I want to get to that too.
Well, uh, Arturo knew the story was written. It was written in a book about crimes. It's a real story that happened in the United States in 1949, and he knew of the story. He always liked it, and then in 1973 or something around that, Leonard Castle did a film called The Honeymoon Killers about the same case. So Arturo forgot about it. And one day we were here in La Jolla, uh, walking in the beach, and there was a nurse with very blonde, very with tons of makeup, and an elderly guy. And he told me he reminds me a woman in a crime, which is Coral. I think I changed the names, of course, and and he told me this story, and I love this story. And we went to the hemeroteca, to the hemeroteca is the way to say in English, hemeroteca, and I read like 2 meters of material in those days in La Jolla, and and Arturo told me it's impossible to do it in Mexico. And really, it was very hard to translate the story to Mexico, mainly because the familiar nets and the neighbors' nets around people make this story almost impossible to happen in Mexico. No widow can go or fool around in those days. And so we get to the conclusion that we could put that this story up north near to the border, which is much unpopulated, and closer to the states. Actually, it's like 50 kilometers away from the border, so it looks like Texas. Exactly look like Texas. And then the other twist that was very difficult to adapt that was that in Mexico we don't have death penalty, and both killers died in Sing Sing in 49. So we found this wonderful, truly, and very realistic way of deal with people that you want to get rid of, which in Spanish has a term, and the term is ley fuga, which not other language in earth have it. When we have the translators, they cannot find the way to put ley fuga. In all Latin America and Spain, we know exactly why women. And it was much more cinematographic, so that's more or less the story.
Well, the story also goes that I had read this when I was a young man and liked it, and I said to Basil when we met this fat woman in La Jolla, and said that she reminds me of Martha Beck. So I told her the story, and I said, well, we can't do this film because it's sort of recent. There was this Leonard Castle movie And but years later, I said, let's try to do it. I mean, nobody will remember this film. Nobody will even know it was made. And finally, when it was shown in Venice and won a bunch of prizes there and things like that, I remember Bertolucci coming to me and saying, this is the remake of the Castle film. And I said, yeah, that's my favorite movie in life. And everybody in Venice had seen this film. So it was everybody's favorite movie at that moment. So I felt a bit downtrodden for those terms. But well, anyhow, it's there. It survived. It's 20 years old. And as you could see, it was dedicated to Leonard Castle and to Martha Beck and Raymond Fernandez, the two true killers. And so it's a little love story with mad love. Mad love is a very peculiar term that was sort of picked up by the surrealists in the 20s, and it led them to do many of the things they didn't conceive. And the notion of mad love is quite fascinating because it's love above and beyond any barrier or any moral or other issues. So that was the reason we wanted to make it. It's humanity in its rawest essence.
And one of the things that's really interesting too, it's the way in which we're talking about love here. So we have the way in which she loves the the romantic novels, the film stars. So film stars play a big role in this, and she loves Charles Boyer, and eventually wants to turn him into Charles Boyer. But then there are also gradations of jealousy, different ways in which he talks about her as her forms of jealousy, and his forms of jealousy. So could you talk about and she's such a well, they are fascinating characters, but I mean they are truly astonishing people.
Oh yeah, and they fell in love between each other because of their demeanors, their vices,
Vices.
biases. Uh-huh. They fell in love because they need each other because they feel themselves they were failures. And so the failures, the sense of failures, link them together. And then if you start killing people, you're even linker together. So there was no way for them but to love each other because he know that I have flaws. And he loved me exactly for that.
And
But
there's no love story without jealousy. I can tell you that in my immediate first person. I mean, I haven't killed her, but
almost. Almost.
but I've tried. I've tried.
What can I say to that?
Well, you got things there.
So, but the other undertone in these incredible scenes between them, and where this relationship is being explored, are these long takes that really bring us into those moments and just keep us there. And I know, I mean, this is I've seen many of your films, and so I know that this is this relentless kind of way in which we're brought into these lives. Can you just talk a little bit about how you work with, well, how you think about shooting those sequences and using the long takes? You
Been,
probably don't think about it anymore.
I certainly do very, very, very closely. I've been doing movies for 53 years now, so it's been a long career and a fortunate career. And I started many years ago, and I remember a little scene in which I needed to see a character and go with her as she goes through sort of a maze in her house, and I wanted to follow her. And the equipment in 1965, the cameras and the stuff was very heavy and very complicated to move. So we had this little Arriflex, and that was stuck to the operator's head with bandages and things so it wouldn't shake, and one of those chairs for invalids with wheels, and so that's how we did it. And I loved it at that time. And I remember I was 21 years old when I was shooting that movie, and I had an old cameraman, the oldest in the industry in Mexico, and I told him I wish I had a camera that could fly. I wish I had a camera with wings. Many years later, the digital platform gave me that. Uh, Equipment started to be smaller and easier to transport, and it helped me do the films like I wanted to. I wanted my films to have an undulation and not the sharpness of cutting. I wanted to capture everything in one scene, in one whole scene, and I've been doing that for many years now. Every scene is only one take, and you have to work around however you need it. So I do think about it very closely. And with Paz, when we work the screenplays, well, she sits down in her study and writes them, and after at the very beginning, she used to give me pages, and I read the pages, but now it's the whole thing. But after the thing is written, and uh, I usually like it, because if I don't like it, then I go ahead and do what I was planning a while ago, and kill. And so, but I like it, and we discuss exactly how it should be written in order to be filmed, in order to be shot with, as you said beautifully, a relentless camera. Because I learned quickly in my career that the fundamental element to make a movie with is the camera. And I learned immediately after that the way you tell the story is the story. So the camera helps me to do that, and we have to. She has to write it in order that is possible. So it's complicated because
Yeah, right.
it's you have to go through a lot of obstacles.
Yeah, actually, that was my follow-up question, because it would seem that way because of the timing, because of the dialogue, and because the takes are so long, and it brings us so closely into, especially that scene that I'm gonna bring up, the scene which I'm assuming was a scene that was censored, that which I've only seen this film in its previous version. So maybe you can walk us through. This is the scene towards the end where we finally get to the mother and the daughter, and when she becomes pregnant, Coral is brought back to do the abortion. And then I believe it's that sequence of the abortion that's
Yeah.
not been there. So it's about 5 minutes that were reinstated into the film.
Is the abortion and
The child,
the killing of the
the
daughter.
daughter, yeah.
Before the censorship began, when she get to the bathroom, take the clothes off the little girl and take it. Don't worry, the water will be warm, etc. But you don't see her put it in the bathtub and keeping down. And to me, those two scenes were very important because first in the abortion, I began to have a link between the two women, especially that kind of link that only happened with females when they perform, of course, in an abortion, no? And I need to begin to humanize Coral, the fat lady. I have to humanize her. And then for me, it was very important that in the killing of the girl, we see the pain and we see the translation, the mental switch from their children's to the little girl. She's killing her children. and that's what destroys her, and that's why he calls the police. So for me, it was absolutely indispensable. But the French producer, I'm gonna say the name because I hate him, Marine Karmitz, M. Cadu, said that he don't kill children in camera, and he don't have, he's against abortion, etc., etc. I mean, she's she's Maoist.
He's
He's
He
Maoist.
is.
He's ultra left, and he's against abortion, and he don't kill children in camera. So I hate him. I have to say that the name out loud.
I'll say it again. Marine Karmitz, the censor.
So, so this scene, as you're saying, it really brings the whole the whole film, the whole story from the beginning with the story of the kids, which and this is not completely a story that's absent from Mexican films. I mean, we've seen these harrowing moments in melodramas where mothers are tearing their hearts out, and it's one scene or another similar or not in this vein, where women are having to give away their children or willingly give away or killing their children. So it's a very difficult moment, but in the story it brings it back.
You don't see that in Mexican melodramas. I do it.
Yeah, I know.
I'm the only one.
Así es la vida.
That's my privilege. No, in this film, these two scenes were very important for one reason. This film has the notion of duplicity. Everything happens twice. Mirrors are there to do a double image of things, the two-faced characters, and everything happens. You see it. It's very symmetrical. And I think structure is important in these cases. So taking away a bit of the structure sort of not tumbles, but makes the whole notion of the structure of the film have a couple of flaws, and with it was helped.
In this case, precisely, is he fall in love with her because he was capable to give the children away. He decided to call the police because she kills the child. The two turning points of the story are the giving away, the destruction of the children. To me, maternity is very important. I have to tell out loud. I'm a mother of three. I was a mother since I was very young. It's not that I am a horrific woman. To me, maternity is very important. So in this story, you have to emphasize. She was a mother, and that changed you forever.
Yeah. And Regina Orozco, who plays Coral, could you say a little bit about, because I think it's key. I mean, the cast is brilliant and absolutely key in.
Well, she when she made this movie, she had made one film maybe in a very small role. She's not an actress really. She's an opera singer, and we cast her because it's very complicated to find an actress that's fat but sexualized, that has these two characteristics that are very important for this coral, and when I met her, it was frankly a surprise because she's got a very strange body. She's like thin on top and fat but below, so it was very peculiar to work with her in those in that sense. I had to emphasize the size by sitting her, giving her back to the camera and almost covering the whole frame. And it was very complicated to work with her because she was not an actress. All the rest of the cast, I mean, Daniel Jimenez Cacho is one of the brightest actors in Mexico. Of course, Marisa Paredes and Julieta Urrola, Juanita Norton, and all, and then the young girl, Veronica Merchant, was the last victim. They're really bright actors, and she was not. So she was very, very nervous and very scared. And it was when you're nervous and scared, it's not easy to work in a set. Actors are very frail people. You have to treat them very, very carefully, even though it's completely different than from working with actors here. It's totally different. And here they have the power. They have just the vocation.
Did her being nervous in any way help her performance? Because she's such a, I mean, because she is so awkward in some scenes and desperate, and she moves around, following him around and following everyone. So she's kind of a nervous.
Yes, yes, she's like a force of nature. In real life, she's like a hurricane. And so when she's in camera, she has this kind of clumsiness plus hysteric. She tends to become hysteric. Well, she's an opera singer, she's a diva, a real diva. But it's fantastic to the camera because she was able to portray the show the explosions and the subtle little moments very well. When she was jealous of the two widows, I adore her. I was watching her and saying, she's like sweet. You know, she's like a chocolate.
So in the original story that you had read in the book, and that was obviously the original story, she was a fat character, right? She
Yes.
was.
Well, that's very peculiar because she was very fat, Martha Beck, and when they put him into prison, they brought him from I don't remember where, somewhere Midwest to New York, and it was a very scandalous fait divers. An event in the newspapers. It was very, very well known. It was almost OJ, but in those years, which was different. But in jail, Raymond Fernandez, was bald and had a scar, and he thought of himself as a freak. Received hundreds of letters from women here in the States saying that they would marry him, and she received terrible hate mail. And there was one comment that she said to one of the jailers, one of the women jailers where she was kept. She said, they hate me not because I killed a child, but because I'm fat. And that was a sort of what gave us also a notion of how we should treat this character.
And the other aspect that I found really interesting is the way in which his Spanishness comes up, and also there's the scene where I think it's the first victim. Where they meet at the bar, and she says, "Oh, no, 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 I don't want." I think it's her that she says, "I don't want the Spaniards because they son rojos." Or can you just discuss a little bit about that aspect of it?
That's because actually, Raymond Fernandez, the actual killer, was a Spaniard. And back then, in those days, those were the days where there were Latin lovers. I mean, they put romantic touch. And keep it in the film means that in Mexico, a Spaniard is a European fancier. And so it was useful for the film.
No, it was they were the days of the Spanish exile after the war, and what the exile that we got in Mexico, which was very fortunate for Mexico, were the scholars, intellectuals, and very important people, which, of course, were Republicans, and that in those days saw communists and things like that were seen not with good eyes with a certain sector of society.
And Marisa Paredes, as the Catholic, the ultra religious victim. There's a scene in here which is absolutely wonderful where after they've gotten married and she comes back into his room and she really wants to be with him. Um, and her body movements up until that time, the way that she's holding herself very kind of calmly, and then suddenly she straddles him in the bed, and it's just a magnificent moment of the potential of who she can play, of Marisa. So could you just talk a little bit about working with her?
Marissa's very difficult because she's very good. So she knows
She's
exactly
very
how to go about a scene and how actors have two things that are basic, and it's their bodies and their voices. That's the instrument. So that's it. And Marisa handles it with absolute beauty. So she knows exactly how to go about it, and she was very precise. I have a choreography of every scene, exactly what's going how. In those days, when we had photographic material, we had a few rehearsals, and then we shot. We shot for not many takes, because we had just a few cans of film to work with. So it was choreographed to precision, and Marisa in the choreography and in the position was always exact. She's a really admirable actress, and difficult, but I thank her for that. It was really good, and we're still friends, and that's a good thing.
So you have said that somehow in each film there's something that you left behind that you didn't do that you wish you had done. Is there something like that about this film?
Yes, of course. I wanted this film to be the Seven Samurai, but it came out to be this. I tried my best, but then again, one is what one is, and I I apologize.
No, well, you put it back to the way it should have been. I suppose that's one of the answers.
Yes.
Um, and go ahead.
That's the most difficult question. It's like, do you have the same child, or you replace that child with the other one who could be born 4 months after? It's impossible. This is your creature. It's like your child. You love them, whatever they are. No, short, fat, stupid. You say, he's magnificent. This is my child. It's magnificent.
It's short and fat and stupid. Thank you.
So how did the two of you meet and start working together?
We've never met. No, we met working. There's a few. There's different versions. I okay, no. So we met working, and Bas used to write uh, stories and literature, and she studied literature in school, and she wrote comic books, cultural comic books. It was adaptations of 19th century Mexican literature into the comic books, and she wrote the adaptations for that. And we met that way, and she was doing television at the time. And I met her, and I read a couple of things. We talked first, and she was very precise saying things, and I read a couple of her things, or very schematic things. But she talked to me. She talked a lot. It was formidable then, and she's never stopped, and it's 32 years already. And okay, so she was very fascinating because she was very precise, and so we became friends. And one day I asked to do a Juan Rulfo film, one of the great writers of Mexico, and went to the authorities, and they said, yes, you can do this, because it was a remake of a film already done. And I called her on the phone and I said, I want you to adapt this book for me, a movie. What movie? She said. I said, this Juan Rulfo little novel called El Gallo de Oro, and it was on the phone. And she said, no, and hung the phone. And I called her again and said, why no? Because I don't do those things. And I said, hey, nice voice. I started to talk like that, and I said,
Just like just like the
yeah,
character in the
yeah,
film. No.
you have to do it. It's nice, and it's gonna be wonderful, and you're gonna. She's I've never done this. Well, you can do it. So I said, no, bang, and so I called her again, and I said, listen, I give you 2 hours to decide. Think about it. She knew the story well, and I said, I'll give you 2 hours, and so she said, "Fine, give me 2 hours," and no cell phones then. And so I called her. 10 minutes later, I'm impatient, and so I said, "Okay, have you thought about it?" And she said, "Well, okay, yes." And that's how we met professionally. And she wrote a screenplay. You know, screenplays are usually, I don't know, 90, 100, 110 pages long, no more than that. The first version she gave me was a screenplay. It's a 90-page novel, and the screenplay had 365 pages. So I said, "It's lovely, but we can't do this. You have to do it. Do it. It was a normal movie at the time. It's a 40-year-old movie or something like that now." And so I said, I only have an hour and 45 minutes to do this. So we took away things, but what she gave me to read was absolutely wonderful. Paz writes her screenplays opposite to everything you've read on the books of how you should write a screenplay. She's the complete no-no of screenplays. She describes everything. She describes the odor of spaces. She describes what characters are feeling, the things that you can't shoot, but that help the whole crew to know that we're doing the same movie. There's no interpretation of, I thought the movie meant this, says an actor, or I thought the film looked like that, says the cameraman. And no, but the way she describes and does the whole work is unequivocal. Everybody knows exactly that they're doing one film and not interpretations of many films, and that one film is my film. They've always said in these territories, film is a collaborative art. In Mexico, I know it's a collaborative art, but they have to collaborate with me. That's the way to do it, and it's different. We have different ways of working the pyramid in Mexico than here. But working with Pasa Scripts has been one of my great good moments and advantages.
Well, it,
Before
go
he
ahead.
killed me, he need witness.
It is definitely one of the most beautiful and productive partnerships for sure. And I think we're almost out of time, but I just want to say that it is a privilege having you here and for us to be able to see the film in this form and to be able to appreciate the fullness of these characters, brutal as they are, because it is a brutal reality we're talking about. But that is part of what makes your films extraordinary.
Thank
So-
you.
Well, before we leave, I want to thank Christina for being here in the panel with us, and naturally, I want to thank the Academy, who were gracious enough to invite us to show our work here. It's of course a privilege for us, the people that have were kind enough to invite us or have been very gentle. And so far, I don't know if they had seen the film yet, but it's been very nice being here. And naturally, I want to thank you all for coming here to see us, because it is you that makes us. the invisible filmmakers visible, even if it's just for the duration. So, in our name, thank you from our heart.
Thank you.